So I think, first of all, for the filming crew here, if we start with some introductions, and starting ladies first, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Louise. I'm the founder of Digital Twin, which is a sustainable marketplace, an e-commerce marketplace where we turn digital creations into physical twins on demand in an ecosystem of micro factories.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. So my name is Shrez Ahmed, coming from the Crypto Valley in Switzerland, actually, so came all the way for this lovely panel. Active in two main roles in the Crypto Valley. So one, the Crypto Valley Association, so one of the largest non-profits active in the space. In the Crypto Valley is where Ethereum was founded, a lot of the major protocols are there at the moment. And so the non-profit's goal is really to kind of like support the various companies that are kind of rising the tides to lift the boats up. So various organizations, I think there are around 1,600 crypto and blockchain companies in Switzerland, so it's still quite a big ecosystem. And then I'm also the managing partner of Stone Partners, whereby we tangibly support some of these entities in growing. So be that like Vodafone, Ferrari, H&M, where we supported them in their Web3 initiatives, or even Web3 inherent companies like Aave, Swissborg, etc., whereby we help them kind of as an extension of their team grow and support adoption of Web3.
Wonderful.
I'm Connor Svensson, founder and CEO of Web3 Labs. Web3 Labs is a strategy and technology company specializing in obviously Web3 and blockchain technology. I've been in the space for a while. Back in 2016, I wrote one of the major integration libraries for Ethereum for the Java platform, which is the most widely used development platform in enterprise. Contributed a lot to industry standards as well with respect to enterprise Ethereum. But yeah, now our core focus really is working on kind of strategy and delivery with some big names that we've worked with in the past, including Microsoft, JP Morgan, R3 Consensus, but also growing our customer base for our Epirus blockchain data and analytics platform.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as we see, quite an esteemed panel today. So, I don't think any panel I've heard during this whole event or previous events that we've attended, there's one word that keeps on coming up, one name that keeps on coming up: FTX. We were just having a chat in the audience here about the fallout for clients that aren't directly affected by that, but their interpretation of work that we're working on together. So big brands that we work with are saying to us, we don't want to talk about tracking carbon credits on blockchain anymore. We want to just talk about the metaverse. And so while we have this fallout, I'd like to understand a bit more about how we're seeing that. Do we think, and I think a really good question that's come up many times on panels that I've done about the metaverse is the regulator ready for the metaverse? Are regulators ready for the metaverse? And any thoughts on that particular question?
I mean, I don't think so. Is the answer to that. I think it's changing so quickly and evolving so fast. So how do you even begin to regulate? And what body would regulate the metaverse anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's it. When we're sort of moving towards, the full vision of the metaverse, which is the ultimate expression of a free and open internet, right? How do we see, what challenges do we face as an industry to get that recognised? What do we do about the rule of law? Where do we go around ethics, et cetera, et cetera? And I'm wondering if that's any conversations that's happening with clients in particular at the moment.
So I won't touch on ethics just yet, but more generally with respect to the regulation points and the metaverse and Web3, the FTX events have burnt a lot of people, but at the same time, it's for the longer term health of the Web3 ecosystem, it is a positive thing. Now, again, I don't want to downplay just the significance of the fraud that happened and so on, and that it does have a very real impact for a lot of people there, which is not nice for them. But at the same time, really this last couple of years, there's been such a cycle around crypto and NFTs that has been off the back of price speculation. And whilst that has brought a lot more people into it, some of them have kind of, that was what brought them in, and then they've dug a bit deeper and were like, wow, this is an amazing technology. But it had that wider effect of a lot of people losing track of what the true utility of these things is. And the whole narrative around the metaverse and Web3, there needs to be genuine utility for it to work. And for there to be true utility, you can't have price speculation everywhere. You can have it in parts of the market, and of course, where we're talking about maybe the first generation NFTs, or where people are specifically creating, where you have artists expressing themselves creatively using NFTs, then it completely makes sense. But more generally, people need to associate first and foremost these Web3 assets with not the speculation but the utility. And I think great examples of this, that whilst it's not a metaverse example, it's something that's very relevant, I think, for NFTs. The Palm Network, who partnered with Damien Hirst early on for his currency drop last year, they're doing collectible DC comics now, but they're charging like $6 to $10 an issue, which is like a sustainable price. And we need to see more and more companies doing these sorts of things, because that's what's going to enable this utility aspect to start to flourish. And then that's the kind of model that we need in the metaverse. And so, yes, prices have crashed. Yes, a lot of people have been really hurt by this, and there's a lot of fallout to happen. But the upside with all of this is that hopefully it brings people back to the utility, and that's the essence of what Web3 is about.
Can I just say also, it's about decentralization. I mean, there was a centralized network that collapsed as such. So the metaverse, we're wanting it to be decentralized, and we're all focusing on decentralization being the way forward. But yet, I think we're struggling with regulations not being there. But how do you regulate a decentralized network of metaverses?
It's funny, and again, I don't want to go down too much, but I think we can drive this back towards what we're looking at with the metaverse. Is that, if I think about the reason that probably all of us are sitting in this room today, there was a reason that we probably read the Satoshi white paper. For me, the route in was Ethereum, to look at that and understand what they were trying to achieve. And it seems now that if I'm speaking to newer clients, maybe Gen Z clients that have only been in the space for a few years, the trust that they had in centralized exchanges or centralized forces would absolutely blew me away. Because when I first started playing around, and I've had stuff on centralized exchanges, it frightened the hell out of me that it was there, because I didn't have my private key. And so it's funny that we've had to have something like this to bring people's attention to it. So I think that's a good point to touch on. But actually, I think now, do we see, and I think, if we're taking on clients or speaking to partners, real world partners, do we think that, NFTs are going to play a big part of this, right? For gated access, for adding value to the chain, to help scarcity, etc. But do we think that brand's toxic now? Do we need to move away from the language? And I think the danger that we're seeing is that, I was just having a conversation with Jane about this. We saw the FIFA ads going out for digital collectibles, for example, and the first thing people say, although they're not mentioning NFTs, is, you see the Facebook comments, they say, that sounds a lot like an NFT. It's quite divisive now. How do we move on from that? What do we do to kind of get people to understand the value, but detach themselves from what they've seen when we move from billions of dollars on OpenSea, actively trading with future promises of utility, to now where we're moving to 150 million? The bottom has fallen out of that market. And even with the best laid plans of what these people were going to achieve, especially if there's utility, a lot of those dreams may be in the dust. So there's a lot of work to do. What do you think we need to do to move forward from that?
It's a very good question. I think the first one is just a little bit of time. I think time kind of heals all. I do inherently believe in digital unique objects. I think they do play a really big role. We're talking about the whole metaverse concept. I think metaverse has really just appeared in time where our whole digital lives kind of connect together, and digital unique objects play a big role in that. We need to be able to certify that this is your own, or that person's own object. And so I think as all of this progresses, where it's definitely going to become more and more useful, and people are going to less kind of attach that to like, oh, this is an NFT or that is something else. When the user experience, user interface improves, they're just going to know, okay, that's mine, and this is the way it is. And I think we're really close to that. I mean, just like the statistics kind of worldwide, we spend on average worldwide with everyone in the world around 7 hours on the internet per day. And so since the list, it's 5 hours and 44 minutes. But ultimately, we have a whole digital life. And so if we have, let's say, this pair of shoes is mine, I mean, we're going to need something that we can say, okay, has some level of ownership as well. And I think that inherently can only for the moment, the best way that we've seen to be able to do that is through blockchain technology and doing it in that way. Potentially there's going to be another technology that we're going to find that is going to enable us to do so as well. But I think for the moment, the most seamless way is through blockchain technology.
Absolutely. And I think, obviously all of us here are dealing, as I say, with real world clients that want access to Web3 to kind of define their strategy, to work out what's next. What are some of the challenges you're seeing about education at the moment? We have a lot of inbound leads, and the conversation and the narrative has changed considerably over the last 2 years as people become more educated. So if we were talking to sports clubs 18 months ago, 2 years ago, they just asked, they all had an NFT strategy, but they didn't know what an NFT was. Then all of a sudden they had a Metaverse strategy, and clients that we've had who remain nameless turn around to us and say, what the hell's the Metaverse? But we've got to consider what it looks like in 4 or 5 years' time for us. We've seen this. Like, what do we do? They buzzwords are being thrown around. What are some of the challenges that you've seen with sort of real world clients trying to get involved and their level of understanding? Are they coming across more educated? Are they understanding? I know I spoke to Louise before the panel, and you were talking about how much time somebody spends in a virtual changing room compared to flicking online, going on ASOS where you're looking at 2D images. Well, you told me a really interesting statistic around that.
Yeah. I mean, I think for fashion brands, they haven't really nailed. A lot of them haven't nailed Web 2 or retail. So and they struggle to always, have a brand story that's clear to their customers, and so then trying to bring that into a whole new virtual shopping area and educate a new audience about the brand, but maintaining that strong brand message to the customers, I think is the biggest challenge for brands. And as a statistic that I said, it's kind of worth doing, and I think the ones that really put the effort in now and that nail it will have huge success in the future, because the online engagement on for e-commerce is like 2 minutes, but it turns out it's 14 minutes in a virtual retail environment, which kind of increases conversion by 70% and on and on. I mean, it's great statistics, worthwhile, but it's.
And what do you think? This is something that bears in mind. Obviously, there's a lot of conversations in the press at the moment about the death of the high street, for example. Do you think one will kill the other? Do you think it will get to a stage where your retail hubs become the place where you collect the fashion and that you've done it, or do you think we can complement one another? Do you think bolting on a metaverse experience into a physical store is important, or do you think that's kind of by the side?
I think for retail giants, that having the retail immersive space inside where customers can engage with NFTs and gamification and have an immersive experience, I think will be the hybrid that they will be forced to do that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from your business point of view, that's exactly what you're trying to do, right? Yeah. But this is a big question, and I think I'd like to take it to the rest of the panel as well. What does digital transformation look like in this situation? So, for example, we recently worked with a client who was working with The Who, the band. They built immersive album experiences around the album Tommy. Now, if you think about The Who's target audience, who are they? They're 65-year-old old mods. They're people, so you were going to send them, even if you were to send them an Oculus, they're not going to engage in the experience. So what they did to get them engaged in the virtual world was to create a memorabilia exhibition. So they could go along and see signed work, limited edition prints, memorabilia from the film Quadrophenia, memorabilia from the film Tommy, and then you are walked into the immersive experience because it's there for you. That's the digital transformation. The analogy we often use is digital transformation. If you've got children, you want to teach them to clean their teeth, you do it in front of them. So you need to be able to walk them in and show them how to do it, because there's going to be a drop-off. What do you think some of the challenges in educating, people that may be resistant to the metaverse? What are some of the things that we think we can do to kind of bring that experience to them? Do we start with browser-based experiences and try and build them up? What are some of the strategies that you are using to kind of move stuff forward?
I think an important part of this is to a degree you do have to accept that there's certain demographics that are more likely to engage in this. Specifically to your point about, say, the Who's typical demographic being that kind of that older generation there. Yes, there's still going to be folk there that are very much so up for these kind of new cutting edge experiences, but by the same token, I think if you look at where the most digital natives are, it's like the youngest generation of all. It's like, I don't know what it is in terms of what you call that generation, but the people who are sort of 20 in their 20s now, or even teenagers now, they're the ones who are really embracing the digital first lifestyle. I mean, from my own experience, the internet came along when I was a teenager, so it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that social networking became a thing. So it's even for me, I'm a dinosaur compared with some there, right? And so I think it does make sense to be realistic about where you're likely to get the most utility from this, because the young, they're especially happy to really live their lives digitally. They're happy to, a great example, and this was actually on the topic of the currency NFTs, speaking to a friend of mine about it, because the idea with that was that you could either have the physical version of this print or the NFT, but it was mutually exclusive. You had to, if you wanted the physical, they'd burn the NFT, whereas if you wanted the NFT, then they'd burn the physical. And he spoke to his parents about it, and they're like, well, of course I'll take the print. And then he spoke to like one of his younger cousins, and he's like, well, of course I want the token, because it's on my phone, I can show that to people. And it just kind of shows there is a sort of natural divide there. And so whilst it's certainly not to say that it's not going to work with different generations, I just think it's going to be harder, and that's purely based on people who've grown up with smartphones and so on from, almost from birth, had touchscreens, so they're going to be a lot more comfortable with these digital first experiences than people who've, it's become part of their lives as they've got older. And so I think that's kind of how it is. And even myself, like, I was at a conversation recently where there were these people who are in their 20s talking about how they use TikTok as their primary search engine now because they want a video result, and that just blew my mind, because I'm still a Google person, or maybe DuckDuckGo. But the point is that you get these complete shifts in how people engage with these technologies, and when it comes to embracing these metaverse or new technologies, I think it's important to realise that as well, and think about who your target is and what realistically is going to be the best case levels of engagement you'll get.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the children, our children growing up with Roblox, they are going to expect to have these immersive worlds. That's just the standard norm for them.
Yeah, absolutely, and flattening to the point where, I was always blown away by my daughter. The technology had been flattened so much that she could put her own music on, which shows she developed the fine motor skills to do it. It shows us the power of flattening technology. It's an interesting point. My wife's a teacher. She's a drama teacher. She's been teaching for about 15 years. And in that time, the frustrations that she's had is around budget. She doesn't have the money to build the sets that she wants to. She doesn't have the money to take the trips that she wants to. If you organise a trip in the real world, you have to do health and safety forms. And she's always felt quite caged by that. So actually she started a conversation with a Metaverse school, teaches British curriculum. There are children in basements in Ukraine being educated alongside kids of multi-millionaires and billionaires on yachts. And what blew her away was the ability that there are no-code and low-code solutions for her to be able to recreate Victorian London, very simply in a drag-and-drop format, that actually then empowering the children to do the same. And any good education comes from a wow moment, so if you look at a lot of curriculum studies, if you take children somewhere and get them to write about it, they're going to write a lot better. And I think some of the empowerment we're seeing, especially with low-code and no-code solution stacks, to be able to get the average practitioner to dress a set using drag and drop is outstanding. And again, these are children now that are going to be coming into the professional world who have lived all their lives with Roblox. They're going to be the people that have built Minecraft, and they've learned, I had an autistic child that I knew who built like a replica of Canterbury Cathedral in Minecraft, because he was given the tools to do that, and to create that in Lego in a physical space is near impossible. So I think it's empowering professionals who understand their taste to come in these low-code, no-code stacks, to be able to create stuff that helps them enhance their own practice. Giving back power in the creator economy, educating big brands on doing that is going to be absolutely key, because when we leave these companies in the dirt, once we've digitally transformed them, we need to empower their people to continue that legacy. Because big conversations we were having with sports clubs a few years ago was like, well, look, if you build this for them and you leave them to it, they're not going to use it. There needs to be somebody there that can do it, that has the power to do it. What are some of the challenges with that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, just talking about that kind of like wow moment, I think blockchain technology has the ability, being a very generalist-based one, to provide that wow moment to a lot of different industries. And so, be it, for example, with the metaversal experiences with the World Cup happening at the moment, we were supporting Hublot with their activation. They created a whole replica of one of the stadiums, and so there are many people around the world that cannot go and visit Qatar, but they can go in through spatial and go and visit one of these stadiums. And I think that's really quite inspiring. The same, for example, we're working with Lint for being able to develop in the metaverse an experience whereby people go into the chocolate factory. And okay, not everyone has the opportunity to go into Switzerland and do that, but maybe they want to be able to go and see, okay, how is that chocolate made? They can't smell the chocolate, which is probably the best part of the factory, but at least they can go in, see how it's made, and they can experience it a little bit more. I think from the educational topics as well. I mean, imagine you can go on a field trip every day at school. I mean, I think as a child you'd feel much more engaged with what's happening, and I think that would be amazing. And then you totally forget about that blockchain layer, and then people would be like, they get more and more into those immersive experiences, and then you could bring out, let's say, NFTs or whatever in different forms. And I think that's where we'd forget maybe the past of kind of like, oh, this is a technology where it's going to go up and down. I think it becomes more immersive, educative, and yeah, valuable.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, it's very interesting, you mentioned some sort of big brands there, obviously Hublot. You know, I'm a watch collector and I won't tell you my opinions on Hublot as a brand, but you know, as a name that's getting involved in this is absolutely fantastic. I think Hugo Boss recently did their metaverse experience where I thought it was brilliant. I'm a Hugo Boss maxi, but at the same time, I did feel that they'd got it kind of right, and the non-profit element, and you know, they're obviously ticking a lot of boxes. But when we think about opening up, and again, I think we're going to go back to this sort of digital, physical experience. Do we think that's key to kind of getting this going? Because I remember seeing about, I can't remember the name of the artist because I'm old and I forget the names of artists all the time, but he did a concert in Fortnite. And opened it up then to millions of people, right? And if we think the only time that anyone achieves that is in Latin America, where I may not play and 1 million people turn up because the health and safety element's not there necessarily, right? So, you know, immediately it opens the playing field that people can then go and experience it. And actually, you can't smell it now, but with Neuralink, we're not too far away. We will be able to smell the chocolate as well.
We were discussing this yesterday with an NFT music company, and you know, like to do, I think it's a great use case for the metaverse to have a concert, and especially for digitals, because you know, if you think about a shop, you've got to drive people there. But if you have a concert, they want to see the concerts. They're already there. So you already have X amount of fans wanting to see the concert. They all want to wear the skins of the people that they're, you know, the merch that they designed. And you can have a digital skin, you can try it on, you can wear it, you can see if you like it before you buy it. And you can have direct merch shop, you know, there as well. And I think that's great.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had this
monetization and experience.
Absolutely, and we were talking about this on a personal level. We, you know, Louise and I were chatting about, you know, the ability to, you know, cosplay your in-game character and bridging that gap to have your virtual outfit and your physical outfit, because you know, one thing that's not gone away in all this is people like to attend, and I really am bullish, especially after COVID, that people, live events are not going to go anywhere, even against the, you know, cost of living crisis, everything else that's going on. We have desires as humans to interact with other people, and as you say, when I started to hear about this school where children were in basements in Ukraine learning with children of billionaires that are on yachts, that's complete democratization of access to education. And it isn't just a flat experience, because we speak to people who are building metaverse classrooms and it looks like Habbo Hotel. You know, there's no reason for it to exist. It's just a representation like Sims. You know, this experience is meant to be fully immersive and bridging that gap that actually, you know, you think if you had a school, it could have potentially have tens of thousands of people from different places adding value, and twinning that digital and physical space is going to be absolutely key. First of all, to being recognised, because a parent may say, well, I'm not going to pay this much a term because it's a virtual school, it's not real, it follows British curriculum, etc., etc. So I think to bring people into this properly, the physical space, the proof of space is going to be absolutely key to making people understand, and like we say, back to the Who exhibition scenario, then walking people in terms that they understand, given the opportunity they understand, is going to be very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I think there's other layers to the experiential side as well. I mean, I think within a metaverse, you can be kind of whoever you want to be. I think, you know, there's a lot of kind of like movement now around kind of like, let's say like transgender. There's also a lot of like people a bit depressed because they can't express who they are through, let's say, metaversal experiences or kind of in a digital reality. You can kind of be whoever you want to be. If you would like to be a woman, if you'd like to be a gecko, if you'd like to be whatever it is, you can kind of just be that person. I think nobody is there in a metaverse or let's say in a digital reality that no one's judging you for who you are.
Absolutely. And again, you know, if we think about RPGs, we think about Second Life, which has been around as long as you remember. We knew that the personalities who were accountants during the day have got like Apache helicopters parked outside their house. They're covered in tattoos and they're built like, you know, brick such and such houses. The issue being is that when you met the guy behind it, he looks nothing like that. So we know that people like to play different roles. And do you think we'll have multiple personalities in the metaverse? We have the play personalities, we have the business personalities. We can essentially dress up as who we want to be. But that then leads to, when we moved on to ethics, and I know we've gone completely off script, but when we move into ethics, like, you know, do we need...
It's a big question.
The sovereign proof of identity is going to be absolutely key to knowing who we are interacting with in the metaverse, right?
Yeah, and we already have it as well with our existing online identities. Twitter, you kind of have a more fun, you know, just a bit more open sort of profile in terms of what you'll be discussing there. LinkedIn's a bit more serious and business. Gaming, you'll probably use another identity just because you want the anonymity there. You know, and so, yeah, I believe that will continue with respect to metaverse.
Absolutely.
I want to just say one thing about that. I mean, I think that it's an interesting topic because of, you know, fraud and, you know, bad actors and how do you protect your identity in the metaverse and on the chain. And just to go full circle, I think a good option would be if we all had NFTs of ourselves. So we all become...
Yeah, I mean, we
with huge KYC, you know, as much KYC as possible.
I mean, if we go to Soulbound and we talk about, you know, meat and meta is a conversation we're often having. You know, your meat identity and your meta identity is absolutely key.
I mean, if you look at SSI, so self-sovereign identity, in actually what Cardano is developing in Ethiopia and actually in a few other countries as well, essentially your passport can become an NFT, whereby instead of doing KYC in various other places, you can essentially kind of plug and play that. And so I think definitely it will become that. And furthermore, there's so many different use cases to having a digital identity, digital passport, be it through taxes, etc., etc.
Absolutely. Well, we've come to about time. I'd like to thank everyone for their vote today. I think I've got about 10 seconds to say have a wonderful day, and we'll speak to you all very soon.